There is a huge difference between taking care of yourself and self-care. Now, before you say they're basically the same thing, they're almost the same words, but they are not the same concept. And you have to understand the difference between the two in order to have a healthy relationship with them both. So today we are talking about the difference between taking care of yourself and self-care. Like I said already, I know that this seems pretty self-explanatory, but I want to break this down because I see this being a big problem. And I'm seeing it come up without people even realizing it, so it's time to nip it in the bud and break it down. So, self-care versus taking care of yourself. Taking care of yourself is providing yourself the bare minimum that you need in order to survive. And when I say survive, I'm not just talking about just like food and water. I'm talking about like survive and live. Understand the difference between the two. I'm not taking it all the way to like barely surviving. I want to talk about surviving and living your life. These are things like wearing clean clothes, showering, brushing your teeth, drinking water, eating good food, things like that. Self-care is everything over and above that. So self-care is the face masks and the bubble baths, yes. But self-care can also be doing those things that you enjoy to help recharge your battery and fill your cup. So self-care, for me, looks like sitting in front of the Xbox and playing Elder Scrolls Online for an hour a week. That's my self-care. Self-care for me can also be listening to a non-educational podcast. Self-care can be listening to a Star Wars audiobook in the car instead of listening to a business podcast where I'm going to learn. Self-care for me is going to look different than self-care for you. And that's okay. But it's really important that we get rid of this notion that self-care is only bubble baths and face masks and pedicures. Like, those things are great. And if those things are your jam, roll with it. Get it, boo. Like, I am cheering you on. But just because your version of self-care doesn't fit within society's idea of self-care does not mean that it's not self-care. And before I dive in too deep, like on the details, I want to share with you guys a metaphor that I think may help. I do go deeper on this topic inside of Cycle Breaker, which is my mini course, but I really want to dive into it with you now because it needs to be addressed. And so I want you to imagine that you have this garden. And this garden is beautiful, it's full of flowers. If a veggie garden is more your thing, you can imagine a beautiful veggie garden. I want a mix of both because I love the butterflies. So like I want a beautiful butterfly garden and I want my like produce garden. Like I'm all about that life. But you have one bucket. It's a super cute tin bucket, like an old vintage one that you see like little farm girls swinging in the movies, right? Water sloshing everywhere. That's what you're going to use to go water your garden. And so you're taking your bucket because it's watering time. You get up, you've got on your cute boots, you got on your bandana, right? I'm like setting up this whole scene. I wasn't expecting to go in this deep, but all right, let's visualize. You've got your hair up, you've got a cute like handkerchief on, you got your overalls and your boots, and you're gonna go fill up your bucket so you can go water your garden. And so you take your bucket and you go to the water and you turn on the water and it fills up your bucket. So then you take your full bucket and you walk over to your garden and you go to pour water on your garden, but there's hardly any water in it. And you're looking at it going, what the heck? What on earth? It was full, literally, like not even 30 seconds ago. What on earth? Where did this water go? So you're like, all right, maybe I'm going crazy. You go to fill it up again, and the same problem happens. And eventually, you look at the bucket and realize that there are dozens of holes in this bucket. And even though it might not be super noticeable at the beginning when you're filling it up, by the time you get to your garden, there's hardly anything left. That garden is your life. The bucket is taking care of yourself, and the water you fill it with is self-care. The self-care is what you need to fill your cup to pour out into your life, into your garden, into other people. But if your bucket has tons of holes in it, it's going to be pretty freaking useless when it comes time for you to pour into other people. So self-care absolutely is needed. But if you don't get it in the right order, if you just keep dumping in self-care over and over again, you're going to be wondering why you feel so dang empty. Because you're like, I'm doing the self-care, Carly. I'm listening to the fun podcast, and I'm doing my nails, and I'm doing the face masks, and I'm reading the books, and I'm doing these things, and yet I still feel so empty. My question to you is, when is the last time you took a shower? When is the last time that you took a nap? When's the last time you brushed your teeth? Or you drank some water? or you ate some good food, that you've done laundry for yourself. When was the last time that you really took care of yourself? And if it's been a while, that's why you feel so empty. Now, I'm not here to say that other things don't come into play. Absolutely they do. The trauma that you've gone through, the abuse that you went through, you know, depression, CPTSD, PTSD, all of these things can add to you feeling empty, but I truly believe that starting with this, by healing, by fixing your bucket, is going to help with all of those things. I'm not saying it's going to fix it, don't you dare hear me wrong, but I'm saying it's going to help. And if it's going to help, why not do it? You've got your bucket and it's got holes in it. And it is leaking everywhere and all the water is gone by the time you need it. Why is this important anyway? Why does this matter? One, the biggest thing that I want to talk about that I don't feel like enough people talk about is how we can use self-care to hide just how much we're struggling. And we can use self-care to hide how bad things are. So when I was still in the midst of the abusive relationship, no one knew. Because I was posting all over Facebook about how great things were. I was sharing about how I was taking a bubble bath after my son went to bed. I was sharing that I was kicking my feet up on the couch and reading books. I was sharing that I was doing these face masks and I was making all of my own beauty products and I was doing all of this glorious self-care and I was preaching self-care. You've got to do the self-care. And so everyone said, oh man, Carleigh's doing so great. She's doing that self-care. But no one knew that it had been 5 days since I took a shower. No one knew that I had hardly eaten in 3 days. No one knew that I was like dizzy from dehydration. No one knew that I was wearing the same shirt for 5 days. No one knew that if I was wearing a new shirt, it was a dirty one pulled from the pile because I couldn't get myself to put clothes into the washing machine. I hid the holes in my bucket by pouring in loads of self-care. And because I was pouring in so much, people looked at my bucket and go, oh, she's fine. Look at that, she's always pouring into it, it doesn't matter. But no one thought to look at the bottom of the bucket where it was emptying out almost faster than it was going in. It is so important for us to call ourselves out and realize that we have not been taking care of ourselves. And a lot of times we are using self-care as the excuse not to take care of ourselves because we say, I don't have time for self-care right now. I'm going to go take care of this, when that self-care is taking a goddamn shower. Showering is not self-care. Showering is the bare minimum. Showering is taking care of yourself. But this is a huge problem because in the abusive relationship, we were taught that our thoughts, feelings, and emotions didn't matter. We were taught that we didn't matter. And asking for help with the kids so we could take a shower was a almost guaranteed screaming and yelling fight. And so when you didn't take care of yourself, you were yelled at because you weren't good enough for them. But then when you did take care of yourself, you were put down because you should have spent your time on other things. And so you believed that you were not worthy or deserving of being taken care of being given the goddamn minimum. And you convinced yourself it's because you were lazy. And instead, it's because you were depressed and you were broken and you were barely surviving. So of course this is hard. It shouldn't be hard. It's not fair that it's this hard. But I want you to know that 1, you're not alone, and 2, you're not a bad mom, and 3, you're not a bad human, and 4, you deserve to take care of yourself. So how? How do we fix this? How do we fix the holes in our bucket? 1, it involves getting real with yourself and figuring out what you need to do in order to take care of yourself. Maybe it's seeking therapy or counseling. Maybe it is setting a reminder in your phone every morning to brush your teeth. Because that can be a struggle for people. You can set a reminder to eat 3 times a day. You can set a reminder to drink water. Set a create a schedule where you're going to do your laundry once a week. You can start small, but you've got to start fixing the holes in your bucket if you expect the water to stay. If you want to pour into those people who need you. If you want to pour into your kids who desperately need you. And taking care of yourself is how you begin to repair those holes. It's like you take, I don't know what it is, I talk about it all the time, but I cannot think of it. It's like that underwater duct tape stuff that sticks. There's like the infomercial where there's like a clear water thing and water's pouring out of it and he takes his black duct tape stuff and slaps it on, and even though it's soaking wet, it still sticks. People use it for like boats and stuff. That is what taking care of yourself does. It slaps that sticky duct tape boat stuff, I need to find out the name of it, onto your bucket, and fixes those holes. That's what that does. And then eventually, over time, you're gonna begin to notice when the water is draining. You're gonna begin to notice, oh man, I'm feeling a little depleted today. Let me do like a gut check. Do I have any holes in my bucket? When's the last time I showered? When's the last time I ate? When's the last time that I enjoyed myself? When's the last time that I drank water? You can begin to take inventory of those things and go, okay, wow, I haven't taken a shower in a while, or oh my gosh, my room is a mess. I did this recently. Because for me, when I feel myself going into like the downward spiral into depression, it manifests physically first. And so I noticed that under my feet, all of my like shoes were there because I sit at my desk and I take off my shoes, but there was also like trash from food. I looked at my desk was a mess. I had clothes everywhere. My bed was a disaster. And I was like, oh my God, okay, I've got to take a step back because right now I've got a hole in my bucket and I cannot let this continue to get worse. So I stopped what I was doing and I took an hour and I cleaned up my room and I felt like half of my holes were fixed in that moment because I could take a deep breath and I could go, okay, I feel so much better. And so that for me is a clear sign that there's a hole in my bucket, is when my physical environment starts to deteriorate, which is crazy because it's really hard for me to keep my room clean. That's a whole other situation. But that's when I notice that there's a hole in my bucket, is when I'm finding myself shoving trash off to the side instead of taking care of it. When I find myself stacking dishes up instead of taking them to the sink. That for me is a hole in my bucket. So I want you to begin to pay attention to what are the holes in your bucket? What do they look like? What are the signs that there's a hole in your bucket? Is it that your place gets dirty and you have no motivation to clean it up? Is it that you haven't showered in a week and you realize, oh man, my hair is so greasy, I don't know the last time I showered, I gotta go fix this? Is it when you realize that you haven't eaten all day and your stomach is growling? What is it in your life that shows you that you've got a hole in your bucket? This is so important because you want to always be working towards fixing those holes. And I'm not saying that this is going to make you perfect. There's always going to be seasons and ebbs and flows. You're going to have your bucket fully repaired and then life is going to happen and it's going to have a big gash in it. And you have to then pick yourself back up and work towards fixing the hole in your bucket. There are going to be seasons of your life where you feel like there are holes happening faster than you can repair them. That's okay. I'm not saying this to get you to be perfect. I'm not saying this to fix it. But what I'm saying is you've got to have that awareness if you expect to heal from it. If you expect to heal from the abuse that you went through, if you expect to be a good mom, if you expect to have the life that you've always dreamed of, you've got to have the awareness around this. And the reason why I'm talking about this so much is because self-care doesn't matter if there are holes in your bucket. I am not saying that self-care is not important. Because you can have all the holes in your bucket fixed, but if it's empty, you still can't pour into people. You still can't pour into your kids. You can't pour into your partner. You can't pour into your friends and family and your coworkers. You've got to fill that bucket. But you have to make sure that the bucket is fixed first. And there will be times you're going to need to apply some extra self-care while you're working on fixing a hole in the bucket. But you've got to always be working towards making taking care of yourself more of a priority than the self-care. Because this has to come first, or this is pointless, right? So once you have the holes in your bucket fixed, the next step is to figure out what self-care for you is. Like I said, for me, it's the Xbox. Self-care for me is also reading. It is cooking fancy food. I love to cook. Self-care for me can be laying in bed and scrolling TikTok for an hour. These things for me are self-care. They are the moments that I am taking to myself to do something for me, simply because I want to do it. That's the key. Now, you can include your kids in your self-care, absolutely. One of my favorite YouTubers is the Avant-Garde Vegan, and he shares so much of his food, and my son and I, we want to start cooking that food, and we want to start trying these things. And that for me is self-care, and we watch those videos together. But I make a point to sit down and watch those videos. So absolutely you can tie your kids into it. But I am not watching these videos for the sake of my child. I'm watching them because I want to watch them. I'm watching them because I want to learn new things. I want to do this for me. And yeah, he can hang out, but I'm doing this for me. And that's not selfish. Or heck, maybe it is selfish, but be selfish. Be selfish with your self-care. And then once you figure out what self-care is for you, work towards filling your bucket. Do something every day, even if it's 5 minutes. Do something for you to just begin filling up your bucket. And what you're going to find is that over time, even though you're filling it up little by little, you're going to look and go, oh, dang, I got a full bucket. Look guys, I've got a full bucket. I'm able to support and to help. And you can pour some out and fill it back up, and you pour some out and you fill it back up. You never run on empty because you know that this is what you need to do. You're never running on empty because you know how to refill it back up. And even if you are running on empty, even if it is a season of life where things are just sucky, you know right now is crap, but it's gonna get better because I know how to turn that faucet back on. And there's no holes in my bucket. And so I'm gonna be good. This is so important for us to talk about, and there's not enough people talking about it. And if this is resonating with you, I break this down really heavily inside of Cycle Breaker, which is my mini course that teaches you how to be the cycle breaker of your family. Because with every single mom that I've worked with, they want to do better so their kids can do better. And learning how to take care of yourself and to provide yourself self-care is a huge part of breaking cycles. Because 9 times out of 10, our moms and our grandmas and our great-grandmas, they never got that opportunity, and they don't really know how to not be constant martyrs for their family. And so I go really deep into this. There's an entire lesson, I think it's 2 lessons, dedicated to this inside of Cycle Breaker. It is a course that you can go through within a weekend. Heck, if you commit to it, you can do it in a day. I am so proud of that course. So if you are interested in that, if you want to check out Cycle Breaker, you can grab all the details below in the show notes, show description, depending on where you're watching me, either YouTube or listening on the podcast. But even if you choose not to get the course, even if it's not for you right now, I want you to really take seriously this self-care versus taking care of yourself stuff. So as always, if you have any other questions, feel free to comment below if you're watching on the YouTube channel, or you can DM me on Instagram at karleigh.lynn. I am here for you. I am here to support you. I'm here to help you not only heal, but also become the mom that you've always wanted to be. Thanks for hanging out, boo. I'll see you in the next one.